Hi, everyone. So we got 40 minutes left. I might just do the next two in 20 minutes. 20 minutes and 20 minutes. So they're having their discussion. Let's get into it.
It's not about Hamas anymore. It is not about Hamas. They can tell you it's about Hamas, but it's not about. It is basically. They have said it many times, Piers. This is a way to kind of push them into Sinai. This is not about eradicating Hamas. This ship has sailed. I am sorry, but anybody who still believes that this is about Hamas is stupid, because
I don't agree with that.
Really?
No, because I think.
But why there?
I tell you what I don't agree.
There are like 100 people.
I think
any
country that suffered the kind of terror attack that Israel suffered, with the kind of death toll that occurred that day, 1,500 plus people, grandmothers, kids, young women being raped, kidnapped, beheaded, it's been reported, and so on. Well, you can raise an eyebrow. I mean, they found a young woman's skull, right?
What about
the
babies that were beheaded?
Well, there was a report, and you and I had this discussion on air. You falsely quoted me, and I wanted to clarify that with you in person. You thought I'd said that 40 babies had been beheaded.
So what did you say?
I never said that.
What did you say?
I said it's been reported that 40 babies were killed, some of whom had been beheaded. That's what I said.
Yeah.
I've heard about the baby thing, but I think that sometimes when things like this are happening, it's a misinformation campaign from either side, and what they're doing is because what am I trying to say? What are the chances that we're going to hear something and we're going to say, okay, time out, we're going to go check, and then the world sends delegates there while this war is stopped and they investigate, and that doesn't happen. 0% chance. So when something like that's happening, you can say we found 40 babies beheaded. Maybe you found one kid that a bomb had went off and maybe just obliterated the kid, unfortunately, and the head came off. And you see the head come off and you can't find the body, whatever. It's a terrible thing. But you have people, misinformation, propaganda, however you want to term it, that will say, yeah, 40 babies were beheaded here. And people are going to go, oh, and you show a picture of the baby's head. And people are like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. Oh, that group that did that is terrible. They're terrorists. They're evil people. And now you're getting sympathy on your side, and you're getting people that want to donate to your cause and help whatever way they can. And then the other side says, well, look, they're attacking hospitals with our wounded. Yeah, maybe they did attack a hospital, but maybe that hospital was filled with their soldiers. But you can't say that. So I'm just saying that both sides are going to be giving misinformation because they're talking to the world. They're talking to the world, and they're talking to the people and the sides that are neutral. And they're trying to win them over to condemn the other side or to help them out financially, militarily, whatever it is. So when I hear things like that, I just can't believe it, because I don't want to hear it and be like, oh, that's terrible, and then you hear something else, oh, well, that's terrible too. I don't want to be that person that goes back and forth. I just distance myself from it, and I figure everything comes out eventually. And that's how I try to stay grounded in all of it. But yeah, I just look at it all as misinformation. And it's through the history of wars, it's going to happen.
Totally different. Yeah.
There's a very different. Well, it is different.
Yes.
Do you accept it?
English is a second language, so
they're different things.
Of course, yes.
Between saying 40 babies have been beheaded and 40 babies have been reported to have been killed, including
some. So where are those beheaded babies?
Well, apparently journalists are being shown utterly horrific footage.
This comes to a very important question about credibility. Again, I'm not condoning what happened in October 7th, but I'm not a journalist. But as a journalist, wouldn't you take anything that an authority would say with a grain of thought?
Yes.
Especially if this authority have a long history of lying. And I'm just going to give a few examples. 1996, they bombed Kana. It's a refugee camp. They killed 106 people. And despite that they knew it's a refugee camp. They said, oh, maybe it's a one-time off. 2006, they bombed Kana again. 2014, they killed 2 teenagers at a checkpoint. They denied, as usual, but CNN was there. So they said, we have to say it. 2018, they killed a medic, a Palestinian medic, and they fabricated a video showing that it's someone else, that he was a human shield. And then
I
they,
would say,
can
Bassem,
I just finish
Yeah,
that?
but I do want to respond.
And then 2010, they killed Ahmed Oraikat, denied it, then said, it's okay, it's us. 2021, they bombed the media office in Hamas. It's not us, but no, I'm sorry. And then 11th May 2022, Shireen Abu Akleh, a reporter, your colleague, she's Palestinian, American citizen, she was shot in the head. And they provided forensic evidence and even a doctor's video that it was not them, it was Islamic Jihad. How can I expect to believe this regime, especially if the president of Israel comes down with this ridiculous thing? Have you seen that? No. He said, okay. This was reported by Sky News, and it was the funniest thing I've seen in so much. This was a Colin Powell moment, but like the cheap edition. Mr. Herzog said, like Isaac Herzog, it's like, we have found evidence on one of the terrorists, a manual to create chemical bombs. And then he showed this, and he showed, and this is, so I just want to say, why would a foot soldier go into enemy with like a manual to chemical bombing? It's like, is that BYOB, bring your own beer, bomb? It's crazy. And what he like have like local ingredients to make, and then this is like, this is a manual of Al-Qaeda, of course, convenient state in Qaeda. And let me read it to you in Arabic because this is funny. So, النشرة الدولية المعنية بالتطوير الذاتي والمعرفي للمجاهدين, which basically say, this is basically like a catalog for self-improvement for mujahideen. I didn't know that they have life coaches. So this, and you know what Sky News said? It's like, we cannot confirm or any of this, but we will show it anyway.
So let me respond.
So this is like this is a lying government.
So let me respond. I do think the Israeli government has lied.
All the time.
Right? I do think they've lied. I'm not going to dispute that. I do think they've been caught lying. I do think they've said things that turned out not to be true. I also think that 2 weeks ago, a hospital was bombed.
Yes.
And it was
Who
immediately...
do you think did it?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. Hamas immediately tell the world it was an Israeli airstrike and that 500 people were killed and that the hospital had been destroyed. And then as the next couple of days go by, the hospital is relatively undamaged. The car park was obliterated. Many fewer people than 500 were killed.
How many people died?
We don't know, because actually we're reliant on the Palestinian Health Authority, which is Hamas in Gaza, for the figures. So we don't know the number.
If they're saying, if they're saying they attacked a hospital and they leveled it, they killed 500 people, and then you find out they bombed the parking deck. I think that's, he said a car park. So I'm just going to say a parking deck next to it, and that obliterated that, but the hospital was undamaged. Again, it goes back to what I was saying. Both sides are going to skew the facts to the world. They're not. Israel will say something, Hamas, Palestinians will say something. Neither of them are talking to each other. They're talking to the world. And they're talking to the world to get the attention and the sympathy on their side, because that could create some kind of help financially, militarily, as I said earlier. Even food, first aid. Nobody is going to be honest in the fog of war. No side is. No side's going to say, you know what, we did that. It's our fault. Because Israel, even if that was an accident, they're going to say it was a Hamas hospital. even if the hospital isn't killed or isn't blown up, Hamas will say it was damaged and a ton of people were killed. They're talking to their sides and the world, but they're talking to their sides because, you know, if an innocent place was attacked, you could maybe get a bump in people who sign up to fight. So during war, it's all it is, just lies. And that's in virtually every war. No one's going to be honest. They just can't be.
But a lot fewer people died, it would appear, than the
Like
500.
100?
We don't know.
50?
Either way, it's appalling.
Yeah, it's still
but
too
it may
many.
not have been anywhere near as appalling as was first said by Hamas. But here's the point. Most independent studies of what happened have concluded that it was almost certainly a militant stroke terror group inside Gaza, and they fired a rocket which landed in the hospital car park. In other words, it wasn't an Israeli airstrike.
So I have an issue with that because for 3 days before the attack, the priest and the patriarch of the hospital, because it's called the Baptist hospital, said that they have received multiple warning from Israel that they're going to hit the hospital. And then at the time of the hit of the hospital, one of the top aides of Netanyahu, he tweeted about like we hit the hospital, and then he deleted it, and then basically like Israel gaslighted the world.
But
It was not us. It was not us.
but that's why I said most independent.
No, that's not true. New York Times actually like just published something to prove that it was shot from Israel. And the thing is,
No,
okay,
they didn't, though.
okay, numbers.
They didn't.
Numbers.
Bassem, that's not true.
Okay.
The New York Times has not reported that it was Israel.
No, they said
They haven't.
okay.
That's not true.
Over 10 years, Hamas launched 35,000 rockets into Israel.
And many failed.
They killed 69 people. And 25% military, only part of them were civilians. So over 10 years of 35,000 rockets, they killed 69 people. But in one strike,
But I also want to say, over 10 years, 35,000 rockets. If you only killed 69 people, that's 69 people too many. And that's 35,000 rockets too many. Israel fires one back. Maybe they have smart munitions. So they don't need to fire that many to do more damage. Is it better? No. 35,000 rockets, you kill, we'll just round up 70 people. One rocket fired killed 700 people. One rocket is better than 35,000, sure, but 700 is far worse than 69, 70. That's what I rounded up. So, who's better? Who's better than who? 35,000 attempts to kill people, and they killed 70. But one rocket kills 700. Am I supposed to condemn the one rocket fired because it killed more people? Or do I condemn the 35,000 rockets? That is 34,999 more rockets. Let's just sit here and count. That's a lot. That's a long time. 1, 2, 3, 35,000. I mean, it was much longer than that, but I just edited it out for time. But is the 35,000 rockets acceptable because it only killed this, but the one isn't acceptable because it killed more? No. No, neither is good. But 35,000 rockets being going this way and one going this way doesn't mean I should look at the one and go, how dare you? I look at the 35,000 and I think, whew. Because that's a sustained attack. Now, how many in that time did they fire at Palestinians or Hamas or whatever? I don't know. But he's just saying, and then one rocket. So I want to hear what he has to say. I might go back a few seconds.
Want to tell me that these glorified firecrackers caused that kind of damage?
Yes, it looks like they did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, it wasn't the damage that was reported by Hamas, who wanted people to believe it was an Israeli airstrike. So my point would be, I'm happy to concede that Israel government has lied about stuff over the years. but I'm absolutely certain as well that Hamas lie all the time.
Why are we holding a
including,
militant?
I believe,
Why
from
are
all
we-
I've read, I believe they lied about the hospital.
Why are we?
I just want to say this. I like him. I like Piers Morgan. But he's giving me a vibe now of he's talking to Piers and he's saying stuff, but he's not really listening because he doesn't like the answers he's getting. And that's the first sign of somebody who's shutting out other information. Now I'm not saying he has an agenda, but he has a side that he's clearly, sitting on. And I see him now kind of closing out anything that he doesn't agree with. Now, I don't know how it's just been a slow process to get to here. Maybe he's closing out because he doesn't feel like Piers is accepting what he's saying. Called him Piers. Or maybe he's just not listening because he doesn't feel like he's understanding him. Whatever it is, he's closing up more right now. And that is one of the first things to where now people are just waiting for one person to stop talking because they're not listening to them. You're just kind of watching their mouth. And then as soon as they stop talking, they pop in and ignore everything else that was said. And they say their point. And then, so now that person isn't going to listen because you weren't listening to them. And that's how these discussions just turn to, you're wrong, I'm right, la 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 la. And he's making that face like he's getting to that point. But I don't know. But we'll see.
Holding the militant terrorist group to the same standards as the best
Because
and
they,
only
because they happen
democracy
to be
in the Middle East.
they happen to be the ruling party in Gaza. So they're not just a terror group; they are a political group as well, political party.
Okay.
Well, they are. So the question again comes this, and so far you've ducked it. So I want to ask you one more time. We can both agree that the scenes in Gaza right now are horrific, because I do feel that. But I don't know how else Israel can eradicate Hamas than the way that they're currently trying to do it. Do you have an alternative for them?
Well, again, we are locked in the same thing. What can we do now? But we don't look at what was happening over there. The best recruiter for Hamas is Israel. I mean, you have talked a lot about the horrible condition in Gaza.
Yeah.
I mean, let's imagine like a little boy called Rami. He lives in Gaza. You know, he have a horrible life, but it's not that bad. I know he has a cousin in the West Bank. He's living a good life. He wake up in the morning, and he found out that he was kidnapped by 3 settlers. He was burned alive by kerosene, and he was forced to drink the kerosene. His name was Mohamed Abu Khudaira. That settlers did that to him in 2016. Said, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna find a way to go to Europe. His aunt is a published author, and she won a prize in the Frankfurt Book Fair. His name is Adnaya Shalabi. And now she was canceled because of what's happening, just because of her a Palestinian. His other aunt in America, his name is Amawi. She is a speech therapist, and this is close to my heart because of my son. And she was fired because she did not want to sign for government that said that you cannot join BDS, which I don't understand. Why do people choosing to protest peacefully by not buying goods from a certain country? Why would the United States make that its own issue? So, and this...
What happened to those... Okay, so I don't know what happened to that boy. He was set on fire and then forced to drink kerosene. I'm going to go on a limb and say he probably did not survive. But the ants, one in Germany, one in the U.S., what happened to them, strictly because they are Palestinian, that's not fair. Not fair at all. And I will use something that happened in the U.S., and I've said this before. World War II breaks out. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. President Franklin Roosevelt sets up internment camps, gets all the Japanese American Japanese, however you want to phrase it. They were Japanese people who moved to America, got citizenship, were living their life, working, paying taxes. They were contributing, functioning Americans. And they were rounded up and put into camps. because suddenly we couldn't trust them. And the reason why is because at that time there was a bias. Asians were less than. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnam, the Asian area, you can't trust them. Now, that same war, they were fighting the Germans. German Americans inhabit Missouri. Bud Light beer was found. It was Anheuser-Busch. That was a family. Miller Lite, that beer in America, it's another German family. Nothing happened to them. Nothing happened to German Americans living in the U.S. Why? Because it was the same. And it was a form of racism that unfortunately was allowed to happen because, well, their people attacked us. Now, it's not something that's ever been continued here, fortunately, but it's a sad fact of something that happened. Shouldn't have. And I think of what he's saying because of their religion or just who they are doesn't mean that they're guilty by association. It's not fair. But, if I was on vacation in New Zealand and the U.S. decided to go to war against Australia, I'm sure that I would be told, you're not welcome here. Get out of here. I could be arrested. You never know. I doubt it. I don't think that they would ever do that. And I don't see a war ever happening between us. But what if I was there and I was rounded up because of who I was? I'm an American. So I'm guilty. And it's not fair. That wouldn't be fair to me. Wouldn't be fair to the Japanese that were rounded up. It's not fair to the ants. Or aunts of the boy, not just ants living, on the ground. I don't mean the bugs. It's just not fair to them because they had nothing to do with it. And they have every right to voice their opinion about something that they agree with, right? Everyone loves if you chime in like, you know what? I'm a fan of pumpkin pie. Yeah, I love pumpkin pie too. I'm a fan of Dutch apple pie. Yeah, I love apple pie. Yeah, cherry pie. Yeah, blueberry pie. Yeah, I like cake. Kill that man. Like, what? He just it's a preference. But that's pretty much what it is. You could boil anything down to just that discussion. I like pie. I like cake. We're going to kill that person in their sleep. I'm going to put a bunch of billiard balls in a sock and begin to bash his brains in while he's sleeping because I can't stand people who like cake. What are you talking about? That's what it comes down. Like, everyone is happy to have you voice your opinion if they agree with it. If we're all on the same page, perfect. That's a good thing, by the way. I think in some countries it's like a middle finger. Don't mean it that way. I'm meaning like, hey, that's great. But if you have a difference of opinion, people want to shut you up. And that's what it sounds like what happened to them. And it's not fair. I'm going to shut up now. I apologize. Ranting and raving. No one cares about what I'm saying.
This guy, this Rami is being approached by like, oh, join Hamas, join us, let's go kill Israel. No, I don't want to kill. I'm going to live in Gaza. It's a life. But 97% of water is not good for human consumption. Half of the population are anemic. Even the is not being treated, and it goes into the shores of Israel. It's like, oh, those Palestinians. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So, and then he wakes up in the morning. He doesn't think about killing Jews the first thing in the morning. He thinks about being there at 5 o'clock at the first 50 people in the line for bread, because if he doesn't, he will miss the food for his family. And he goes back and he finds a message saying that we are going to bomb your house. He comes back, he loses his whole family. Now tell me, what is a proportionate response for that?
I don't know. I don't know.
You cannot create terrorism and then you...
I don't know.
They have created this.
I don't know is the answer. But Bassem, let me ask you this. Hamas will have known when they perpetrated what they did on October the 7th, what the scale of response was likely to be. How does that help the Palestinian people
I don't know.
that they are supposed to serve?
I don't know. The wheels are already set in motion.
But it doesn't, does it?
I do not, this is the thing. I feel sometimes that Hamas is with us in the room, that we are bringing Hamas. Who has the power in this equation? Who has the fourth largest and strongest military power? The whole idea about Israel, it's like, oh my God, the Arabs are going to destroy us. Look at the map.
Hamas, well, hang on. Hang on. Hamas's stated goal is the eradication of Israel and the Jewish people.
Yes.
They make no pretense about it. They've made no attempt, unlike the Nazis who try to cover up their crimes.
Absolutely.
They've made no attempt to try and deny what they brazenly...
But that doesn't mean that's what the Palestinians are saying. That is a group associating themselves with that. Maybe it is Palestinians who made it up, Hamas. It could be people from all over that just come in and they join it because they don't like Israel, they don't like Jewish people, whatever. But that doesn't mean that all the other Palestinian people are looking at him and going, yeah, they speak for me. Some of them might just go, listen, your speaking is firing rockets. Their speaking is firing rockets. You're hitting civilians or whatever, and they're hitting me. I don't want anything to do with this. So a lot of those people who are caught in the middle aren't necessarily saying, yeah. They're saying, again? Because they're stuck. And it's not so easy to just up and move and just transplant yourself to another country when that country, as he was saying, is saying, we can't have you in here. Well, I can't go back there. I don't have anything left. It was bombed. It's not our problem. And in a way, it's not that country's problem. But you also, I think, every country has a responsibility, much like a hospital, to save your life. When you're coming from a bad situation, they need to take you in. Even if it's for a limited time, because your life is more important than being pushed away. That's off topic. I apologize.
They boasted about it.
Yes.
They are proud of what they did. Right? And they will have known, again, the scale of what they did on October the 7th would have prompted this kind of response, which would have led to thousands of innocent Palestinians getting killed. And my question for you...
I wish the 7th of October never happened.
Right, but
every time something
you say
happened.
Hamas is everywhere. Well, yeah, actually all roads, roads on this particular part of the crisis, and I accept it's been going on for 75 years, this conflict, but all roads in this crisis lead to Hamas and what they did.
And not necessarily. Because
yes.
all roads goes to the condition that created Hamas. If the Jewish people were expelled from Europe and went to Argentina or South Africa and Uganda and went in and took the land, you would have Hamas in all of these places.
I will say this, that I agree with Bassem on this and a little bit against Piers. Hamas fired the first rocket. That's true. They started this war. But I'm going to flip the time and I'm going to go back to 9/11. Because again, I don't know all the intricate details of this situation. So I'm always going to reflect back to things that I know about. Go back to 9/11. Bin Laden, planes, attack, Taliban, cheer, yay. America's shocked. They attacked us. They did. There's a thing called blowback. It's a term used in the United States government and the military and stuff like that. Blowback is what is kept quiet to the citizens of that country. So in this reference, I'm going to say it's to the United States citizens. That would be me. And every country has a form of this. So just hear me out. Blowback is when bin Laden attacks the United States by taking down the towers, hitting the Pentagon, having the other one crash in Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh. The blowback, right? That's the focus. That's the attack. The blowback is why they did it, and that's what's kept quiet. It is the missiles fired at terrorist bases. It is the sanctions. It is the secret missions that are carried out against terrorist training camps. Cruise missiles fired. A lot of these things that are quietly kept away from the citizens of the U.S. Every now and then you'll hear, yeah, fired a missile at a base. All these things that happen to them slowly build up. It's like putting a pot of water onto a stove, and you just turn it on high, and it's cold water, and you just let it just slowly get to that rolling boil. And that rolling boil is the attack of 9/11. That's what we see. We see the boil. But we don't see all this buildup of heat that caused that boil. Are you following me here? We're not seeing all the things that led up to it, where now the other side is saying, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. We retaliated. And now everyone else is going, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they did that. And now you're the victim. Now, I'm not saying that 9/11 deserved to happen, no attacks deserve to happen, but the term blowback is just that. It's the reason why. And so a lot of those things are kept quiet because the governments of countries don't want you to know that they were doing some pretty gnarly shit that caused that. Because if they can pretend to be the victim, then they are the ones who have that moral high ground. So when he's saying all these things happened, he's telling the truth. But a lot of that I might never have heard about, but that's the blowback to the attack. If you understand what I'm saying.
Agree that the conditions Palestinian people have had to endure in Gaza for a very long time are completely unacceptable. I think it's completely unacceptable that Israel has wielded such control over the people of Gaza, working out who can come in and who can go out, turning on and off water and power on a whim, turning off the internet on and off at a whim, all that kind of stuff I can completely agree with. But given that I think we agree Hamas are a terror group.
Okay, let's say...
Let me finish my question. Given that we agree that Hamas is a terror organization who have a publicly stated position of annihilating not just Israel, but Jewish people, and as we saw on October the 7th, they mean it. If you are Israel, what do you do to get rid of those people who have shown the world that's exactly what they will actually do if they get the chance?
You know what I would do? I would give the Palestinians what they deserve. Terrorism is a virus.
Yes?
It's a virus.
I agree.
If a patient with a flu came to you and you're a doctor, how can you treat that patient? How do you treat it as a doctor? How do you do?
Well, you're the doctor.
You give them nutrition, fluids, and rest. So the immunity of the body gets rid of the virus on its own. If I received that patient with a flu and I took a sledgehammer, it's like, why are you not getting better? Do you think that patient will get better? No. You are weakening him. You are making him worse. Israel did not just weaken the body of Palestinians, making them unable to get rid of hate and radicalism. They have openly bolstered about helping and giving money to the same terrorist organization. So,
I agree. I think Netanyahu is complicit in keeping Hamas in power because it suited him politically.
Yes.
And I think you can't get away from that.
Yes.
There's no question of that. But there's also no question that the Israeli government led currently by him, has to stop Hamas from perpetrating another terror attack. And again, it comes down to this question: what do they do to get rid of Hamas if it's not what they're doing?
I don't know, but like as an Israeli citizen listening to this,
how can you get rid of something if your goal is to also keep it around? Because that keeps you in power. Sorry, peanuts are really good. How can you how can you fight a war against something that you don't really want to defeat? All you're doing is killing your own, you're killing them, but you're going to end it before you run the risk of eliminating them. Give them time, they'll build up, they're right back to it. So how can you defeat something that you don't want to defeat? You're going to live in a prolonged state of war, just continuing. And then all that's doing is just hurting the populations.
how come that my prime minister bragging about giving money to the terrorist group that he is using right now to eradicate a whole group of people, and yet using them as an excuse? Isn't that weird? This is like this is like Tony Blair being like found like giving money to Al Qaeda or ISIS and then going to fight them. How does this work? How does this work?
I agree.
How does this work?
Yeah, but Bassem, I agree with you.
So yeah, it's a terrorist attack, and Israel is funding them. I mean, this is in the words of Benjamin. This is the thing about Benjamin Netanyahu. He brags about that stuff. So this is a circular question.
Yeah, but
yes,
I agree with you.
Hamas is to blame. Who created Hamas? Who's helping them? And who is allowing for an environment for that kind of hate and destruction of Jewish people to aspire? And the thing is, there's something very important to the Western audience here. They think that Israel is a small, tiny country between the hostile Arab countries. The biggest military power in the Arab world is Egypt. They have a peace treaty. Their neighbors, Jordan, they have a peace treaty. Saudi Arabia, Emirates, either like have like full relationship or like on the way of normalization. Yeah. The only people that, even Syria is not like even like they didn't launch like a single bullet. The only two crutches that Israel has is like Hezbollah and Hamas. Yeah. A few militant, thousands of militant. Syria, is that really formed an existential like threat, especially if I know that over 13 years, only 69 Israelis were killed?
I would say.
Would that really wipe out Israel? Is Israel that weak?
I think if you have two groups of people who are ideologically wedded to your destruction as a state and as a populace, and you're constantly firing rockets, as Hamas have done for over a decade now, then that cannot be acceptable. You have to stop that, right? These are terrorists who've now shown on October the 7th their true colors. They don't just talk about wanting to kill all Jewish people. They are going to do it if they get the chance. So I don't believe Hamas can possibly stay in any position of authority in Gaza. I think that would be ruinous for not just the people of Gaza, but also for Israelis. So if you're going to get rid of them, which many people think on both sides is inevitable and should happen as a consequence of what they did, the big question is, how do you do that? And I don't know any other way other than the way Israel is currently doing. Hence my personal moral quandary about this.
Let's say Israel does go through, eliminates all of Hamas. Every single person. What's the likely percentage that that would happen? 0. Some are going to flee to stay alive, and then once everything's calmed down, the war's over, they're going to rebuild. But let's just say they eliminate every one of them. What do you have now? You have a power vacuum that is just waiting to be filled. What's it going to be filled by? A new group? A new group that now has a hatred of what Israel did after October 7th. all the Palestinians that they killed. Yeah, good word, good phrasing. All the Palestinians they killed, believing that that hospital was destroyed. If it wasn't, I don't know. Believing this, believing that. Build up, rinse, wash, repeat. They fire missiles, Israel retaliates. So even if you wipe them out, somebody else fills the place, or two groups fill that spot. It you know.
So if a terrorist takes over the Empire State, instead of taking him out, we bomb the whole Empire State?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Proportion.
That is not even a question.
Well,
that was not even a question, because that would be ridiculous.
You talk about the normalization of the region. I mean, the theory that I most buy into, supported by recent, I think, Wall Street Journal reporting, that hundreds of Hamas terrorists had gone to Iran for training before this attack.
Okay.
It had obviously been very carefully organized, and so that is, I think, highly likely. But if you're Iran, and you're looking at all this normalization, and you're looking at Saudi Arabia being next, this is your worst nightmare. So a perfect time to commit an atrocity like this through your proxy of Hamas.
Again, I'm not a political expert to know what is the background, but let me tell you.
It's a likely theory.
Is Hamas justified? Is all of the horrible conditions that Palestinians are living in, is that a justification for Hamas doing what they did in October 7th? Good.
Do you think so?
Of course not.
Right. So we're agreed.
No, of course. So let me ask you the question a different way. There is no justification what Israel is doing now. No Hamas, no terrorist attack justifies this. Well, because you have been there. No, but you have been there. You have stood against the Iraq war. Yes. And that is too much.
Yeah, but here's the difference.
You are killing a whole population.
No, here's the difference. I didn't stand against them for that reason. Mm-hmm. I stood against the Iraq war because I did not believe we had seen evidence that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
I was not a fan of the Iraqi war. I saw it as them, the U.S. government, trying to remove someone that truthfully should have been removed in the early 90s, the first Gulf War. They didn't. So now you have to stick with that. I don't believe there was any evidence that he was building all this stuff. I was against that. Then it happened, and I wanted it to be over. Just get it done, get it over as soon as possible, and get out of there. Because I didn't think we had any business being there. I was around people that were like, yeah, you know, some people were like, nuke the area, turn it into a parking lot. It's like, oh yeah, that's what they'll do. But some people were for it because they wanted the world to see the power of the American military. And it's like, I don't think we need to show them. Not there.
So we were fighting a war against a country and a despotic leader which had nothing to do with 9/11, as they were trying to claim. It was actually a lie perpetrated on the world, and the consequences were disastrous. 1 million people died. I mean, over 150 British troops died. My brother served in Iraq and could have been one of them. You know, the whole thing was a fiasco, a deadly fiasco. It led to the rise of ISIS and all the hell that came with that. So, you know, yes, absolutely, I fought that campaign against that war, and I wish I'd been successful. But the singular difference here is no one is disputing, least of all the Hamas themselves, that they perpetrated this attack. And I believe Israel has a fundamental right and a duty to defend its people from them doing it again. So if we can agree on that as a principle of a country that's had that kind of attack and how you deal with it, the question then becomes, how do you eradicate the people who did it? And I just think, given the intense nature of the way the population exists in Gaza, very, very large numbers of people in confined places, and that is in itself unacceptable, and I will agree with you about all of that, and that has to be fixed longer term. But actually, if Hamas are everywhere there amongst these people, I just don't see any alternative to what they're doing, and I'm very happy to consider one. But I don't think you have one either.
So if the Iraqis were actually, there was evidence that they were behind 9/11, would that still be okay to kill a million Iraqis?
We have a parallel, which is Afghanistan. And in fact, I would say, but that raises a different question. So was the Afghanistan war just? I believe it was, in a way that Iraq wasn't. I believe that Afghanistan was harboring terrorists, Al-Qaeda. We know that they were training there. We know the Taliban were there. And we went in, we launched this war. It goes on and on and on. Huge bloodshed on both sides. And in the end, after a ridiculous overnight pullout by America and President Biden, the Taliban are back in charge and waging the same kind of medieval rule they waged before all this. So you've got two things. Was it justified to strike back at Afghanistan for harboring Al-Qaeda? I would say yes. Did the means in the end justify the war? You could argue no, actually, because actually you ended up with the Taliban back in charge. So they're two different things. And it may well be here, by the way, as I've said, that if Israel pursues this ground invasion, it backfires horribly. It leads to a much wider conflict involving many other people, possibly including Iran directly. And it could be a horrendous escalation and a massive war raging through the whole region. And that is my fear about it. But I come back to the central point of justification, and I'm really struggling to see what else Israel is supposed to do to get rid of Hamas. And if you've got an alternative, let's hear it.
I do.
We're going to cut it there. We'll come back with his alternative. As I say, man, you just go back and forth on these things. I know some of you are more ingrained on one side or the other. You know, you've kind of got your spot. I stay on the fence. I see both sides. But it'll never end. It'll just never end. My opinion. So, I got back into eating peanuts. Those are shells. It's so good. It's salted in the shell. If you see me popping one in my mouth, I'm sucking all the salt off of it. That's really good for your blood pressure. Okay. So, there's a thanks button. You can donate to the channel. You don't have to. All donations are appreciated. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching my videos. If you watch more than 8 seconds of a video, just subscribe. Those are the rules YouTube is enacting. If you don't want to donate, you can always give a thumbs up. That helps on the algorithm aspect in YouTube. It tells YouTube that I'm not a pathetic piece of garbage, which is nice. And let's see. Thumbs down. What do I have for the thumbs down people? Oh. So the people who want to give a thumbs down, what we do, it's this new YouTube challenge. It's called stick your hand inside a giant Venus flytrap. And you gotta move your hand. Otherwise, it'll think there's nothing in there and it'll eventually open up. That's how they work. If they close on you, don't move. And then eventually it's like, oh, ain't no food here. And you're like, whoop, thank you, buddy. But if you got to keep moving. See, what we do is we tickle you. We go, and you go, stop it. And then it slowly starts to just disintegrate your hand as it feasts. So, stop it, Kris. All right. I'm going to end this video here. We'll come back for the last part. I don't even know what number it is anymore. 6? Whatever. All right. Until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.